Hello, everybody, and welcome to Law Bite number 342, dated February the 20th, 2022. I'm Walter, your mobile historian and blue-collar scholar. Thanks for tuning in today. This Law Bite is entitled Social Studies 102, State Constitutions. Before I begin, however, I'd like to formally invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Juarez Lee Shelton, M.A. And in addition to that, please also click on the little notification bell immediately to the right of the subscribe button. In doing so, you will receive notifications when I post new, exciting, and enlightening videos in history, law, political science, theology, and philosophy. Your support means more than you will ever know. Thank you so much in advance. Again, this video is entitled Social Studies 102, State Constitutions. State constitutions, folks, are the fundamental governing documents of the 50 U.S. states of the United States of America. These constitutions, which are subordinate only to the United States Constitution, establish the legal framework for the governance of the state and define the relationship between the state and its residents. These 50 individual constitutions can be said to reflect the unique culture of each state down to the most minute details at times. Certain states are very traditionalist, while others are quite progressive. Some states believe that all officials, such as the governor, the attorney general, the legislature, the judiciary, should be chosen by the voters, whereas other states vest vast appointment power in the governor to appoint executive and judicial officers. It all depends on the state. As Justice Louis Brandeis once remarked more than a century ago in a Supreme Court case known as New State Ice Company versus Liebman, he remarked that each U.S. state is a small laboratory for social experiments to occur without harm or damage to the rest of the country. And he was right on with that statement. All right. Each state is very unique, and many of them have tried things that other states might have thought to be completely out there. But alas, it's only for that particular state in question. And although, effects could certainly be felt in neighboring states, generally, whatever experiment was being embarked upon tended to not go beyond the border of the state in question. So you get the gist of what I'm saying, all right? Each state is free to try out things that other states might find weird or scary or absolutely reprehensible, all right? So for sure, although the language of state constitutions is as varied as the 50 states themselves, and believe me, they are all very, very different from one another, they do share significant commonalities. First of all, each state constitution, like the federal counterpart, commences with a preamble, which is essentially a mission statement of the state, all right, with respect to its role and its citizens, all right? As a Marylander, this is how our preamble reads, okay? We, the people of the state of Maryland, grateful to Almighty God for our civil and religious liberty, and taking into our serious consideration the best means of establishing a good constitution in this state for the sure foundation and more permanent security thereof, declare. And that's where the preamble ends. And it is immediately followed by Maryland's Declaration of Rights, which is our state's analog of the U.S. Bill of Rights, but of course is, like most states, much longer than the U.S. Bill of Rights. Article 1 of the Maryland Declaration of Rights reads as follows: that all government of right originates from the people, is founded in compact only, and instituted solely for the good of the whole, and they have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their form of government in such manner as they may deem expedient. Simply put, government originates from the people, and it is instituted for the good of the people, and the people at all times retain the right to abolish that government when it no longer suits their needs and create a new one. It is called essentially popular sovereignty and the right of revolution, so to speak. All right. It means that the people have the right to replace this government, this constitution, with one that suits their needs if this constitution no longer does so. All right. You'll find similar language in most, if not all, other state constitutions. Okay. The right to abolish the current government and institute a new one if it no longer serves their needs. All right. So, second, all states have the concept of popular sovereignty enshrined into their constitution or relevant laws in some form. Popular sovereignty is a principle which holds that the people are the source of all political power, like I just said, and that the authority of the state and its government are created and sustained by the consent of the people through their elected representatives. Third, the principles of separation of powers and checks and balances exist in every single state constitution. Specifically, each state constitution establishes 3 separate branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial, and provides mechanisms for each of these branches to be able to check the power of the other 2 in some form. That said, each branch theoretically stays in its own lane and cannot dominate the other 2 branches. I have a separate video on checks and balances, by the way, if you would like to check it out. Fourth, each state constitution contains bills or declarations of rights. In Maryland, we call it a Declaration of Rights. Other states may call it a Bill of Rights. All right, it's the same thing. As the name suggests, these are the rights that the people of the states possess against the power of the state. It limits the power of the state. All right. Usually situated at the very beginning of the state constitution, immediately following the preamble, as we mentioned above. These rights protect the people from arbitrary state action and limit the power of the state in general. All right. There are certain areas where the state cannot invade, or if they are allowed to invade, it can only be done under certain circumstances. Though these rights may not be absolute, perhaps in certain circumstances, for the state to abridge them, like I said, would typically require a substantial interest to do so. All right. So, in other words, it better be a darn good reason. Okay. State constitutions have far more differences, however, than commonalities, and indeed marked differences from the U.S. Constitution. So now we move on to, and rather get into the heavy statistics of comparison between facts of state constitutions and juxtapose the state constitutions with the federal constitution, okay? So these differences include the ages of state constitutions, the amount of constitutions they've had, and the lengths of those constitutions, all right? So again, we'll drop some statistics juxtaposing the U.S. Constitution from the state constitutions, as well as juxtaposing the state constitutions from one another. Really exciting, isn't it? Yep, I agree. All right. So first we address the total number of constitutions that have existed on the federal level and in the individual states. On the federal level, of course, the United States of America has had 2 constitutions, folks. All right. The first being the Articles of Confederation, which lasted from 1781 to 1788, and the Constitution of 1787, which was written in 1787 and went into effect in June of 1788. All right. So the Articles of Confederation in effect from 1781 to 88, followed by our current Constitution, which went into effect June of 1788. So we've had 2 constitutions at the national level. In the individual states, 19 states have had a single constitution since the origin of their statehood. 19 of them. They are as follows: Alaska, Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Massachusetts, and Maine. Next, 22 states have had 2 to 4 constitutions since their admission to the Union. They are as follows: California, Montana, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, North Carolina, West Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Next, 7 states have had 5 to 7 constitutions in their history. They are as follows: Texas, Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Last but not least, 2 states have had a remarkable 10 or more constitutions since their admission to the Union. They are as follows: Louisiana and Georgia. So that now takes us to the ages of the state constitutions. State constitutions also, as you can imagine, vary greatly in their ages, all right? The oldest continuously functioning written constitution in the USA, and indeed the world, is that of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, having been in effect since October 25th, 1780. The American Revolution wasn't even over yet, all right? For the record, the structure of the document, which was very sophisticated for its time, was organized into articles, chapters, and sections, and served as a model for the U.S. Constitution's design. Did you know that? The U.S. Constitution, of course, was adopted 7 years later. Most of the constitutions for the other original 13 states, aside from Massachusetts, were adopted in 1776, the year American independence was declared. Ironically, Massachusetts' constitution was the last adopted of the original 13 states, and the only one still in effect to the present day. For that to be the case, folks, John Adams, who of course was the second president of the United States, all right, along with many, many other distinguished roles, but that being the most prominent, that means, as he was the primary author of the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780, he obviously did a remarkable job in writing the document. The youngest state constitution in America is that of Rhode Island, which was adopted by the voters in 1986. That document replaced the previous constitution, which was adopted in 1843. In addition to Rhode Island, the next youngest state constitution in America is that of the Empire State of the South, Georgia, having adopted its current document in 1983. My native state of Maryland has had 4 constitutions since American independence was declared. The first one was adopted in 1776 and lasted for 75 years until the adoption of the Jacksonian Constitution of 1851. That document lasted for 13 years until the American Civil War radically changed Maryland. It was succeeded by the very short-lived Constitution of 1864, which I refer to as our Civil War Constitution. That document was very controversial. It abolished slavery in Maryland once for all and disenfranchised Marylanders who supported the Confederacy. That was a very good thing, in my opinion. It was so unpopular, however, in many regards that it was replaced only a mere 3 years later in 1867, which gave us the Constitution that still governs this state to this very day, the 1867 Maryland Constitution. State constitutions also vary considerably in their length. All right. Now we touch on the length of state constitutions, folks, based on their basic language and amendments adopted through time. Comparatively speaking, the U.S. Constitution is a very short and tight document containing only 7 articles and 27 amendments. It contains a mere 7,591 words, which may seem like a lot to some, but that ain't nothing, all things considered. When you compare it to the average state constitution, which is roughly 39,000 words, the U.S. Constitution is like an office memo in comparison, all right? So the longest state constitution in America is that of the state of Alabama, which at the time of this recording has 388,882 words, all right? And that's probably changed. That's a heck of a long constitution. That's 51 times longer than the U.S. Constitution, if you wanted to do the real math and the stats on that one. 51 times longer, all right? Texas comes at a distant second place with 86,936 words. Oklahoma at third with 81,666. Louisiana in fourth with 69,676. And Missouri in fifth with 69,394 words. So, as there are state constitutions that are above average in length, like the ones we just mentioned, so too are they state constitutions below average in length. Utah has the shortest constitution of any American state, with only 8,565 words, just barely longer than the U.S. Constitution. All right. This is followed by Iowa with 11,087 words, Rhode Island, 11,407 words, Indiana, 11,475 words, and Minnesota, 11,734 words. All right. My home state of Maryland has a constitution that is approximately 47,000 words. Okay. So that takes us to amendments. All right. Now, as we know, times change with each passing day. And with that, both the federal and state constitutions have generally been, augmented with amendments to meet these changes. So to date, the U.S. Constitution, as I'm sure you already know, has been amended only 27 times since the year 1789. All right. Most recently, it was amended in 1992 with the 27th Amendment, which I'll add, by the way, was one of James Madison's original 12 amendments, 10 of which would be ratified and become the Bill of Rights. So that amendment sat out there, folks, for 202 years before it was finally ratified in 1992, becoming the 27th Amendment. All right, limiting congressional pay raises from taking effect until an election has taken place first. So, aside from the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, of course known as the Bill of Rights, the remaining 17 amendments to our national Constitution have been the result of both governmental and societal evolution through time. All right? For a Constitution that is, at the time of this recording, some 230 plus years old, only 27 amendments is a remarkable thing. All right? Certain state constitutions have been amended significantly since the time of their adoption, while others have barely been touched. The amount of state constitutional amendments usually depends on the following 2 variables. First, the difficulty in amending the state constitution in question, and the level of power concentrated at the state level versus local governments, both of which vary greatly, like everything else, from state to state. Now, with that, we review the states with the most and the least amendments to their fundamental law. The states with the most amendments to their constitutions are as follows. Alabama has the most to date, with some 977 plus amendments as of 2021. California follows in second with 535 plus amendments. Next, South Carolina comes in third with some 500 plus amendments. Texas is in fourth with some 507 amendments. And Oregon comes, actually, South Carolina and Texas, I'll reverse that order, pardon my error, okay? Texas should be in third with 507, North Carolina in fourth with 500 plus, and Oregon comes in fifth with just under 260. So now we move to the states with the least amount of total state constitutional amendments. Beginning with the state with the fewest number, Illinois comes in first with just 15 amendments to their state constitution. Next, Alaska and Michigan come through with 29 and 30 amendments. Connecticut has roughly 31, and Montana and Pennsylvania both have approximately 32 amendments. My home state of Maryland's constitution, which was adopted in 1867, has 234 amendments as of the time of this recording. As the amendment process varies greatly from state to state, just as much the quality of the constitutions themselves, the number of amendments will vary considerably between the states. So that brings us now to the uniqueness of state constitutions as individual governing documents, okay? Because most state constitutions are the fundamental law of individual states, more often than not, their language reflects the unique particulars of those societies. Unlike the U.S. Constitution, which speaks in broad general terms in both the original language and amendments, state constitutional language tends to be much more specific and inclusive. As such, state constitutions tend to protect individual rights much more expansively than does the U.S. Constitution. And they also touch on a litany of different subjects based on the needs of the state itself. Examples include, but are not limited to, health care, reproductive rights, pensions, alcohol regulations, port authorities, education, parking authorities, gun rights, so forth and so on, all right? Because these constitutions are essentially only subordinate to the U.S. Constitution and federal law, states have wide latitude to design their constitutions as they see fit for all intents and purposes. From a constitutional standpoint, as long as a state maintains a republican form of government, then in theory, it's constitutionally acceptable. That leaves the possibility of a U.S. state to adopt a parliamentary system as well. Yes, parliamentary governments can be republican, all right? It all depends on how it's designed, all right? Officially, a parliamentary government could be classified as a republican form of government as long as a monarch is not the head of state. You don't have to worry about that in America. So that definitely leaves the possibility, legally, in my humble opinion, constitutionally safe move if a state ever wanted to adopt a Westminster-style parliamentary government, you know, still with a governor as its head of state and a premier as its official head of government. As that is a republic, technically elected officials, you know, which govern based on the popular will of those they serve, all right? So as long as it has those elements, you have a republican government. You have an electorate that legislates under the authority of the people. And that is one of the basic tenets of republicanism, all right? So, but back to the subject at hand. Additionally, to ensure the strength of strong state governments and to maintain order, Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States obligates the federal government to guarantee those republican state governments' existence and protect them against foreign invasion and domestic insurrection, okay? So we now move on to some of the unique provisions in state constitutions to demonstrate their broad diversity of language. In Maryland, under Article 14, Section 2, adopted in 1970, the question of whether or not a constitutional convention should be held must be placed before the voters every 20 years, regardless of whether or not the legislature wants to pose this question to the people. The possibility of convening a constitutional convention is included in the language of the constitutions of approximately 42 other states in various formats. 7 states, Arkansas, Indiana, Mississippi, New Jersey, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Vermont, contain no language whatsoever providing for a state constitutional convention. Delaware is the only state in the country which does not require the approbation of the voters for an amendment to the state constitution to take effect, which I find very strange. Okay? Whatever. Article 1, Section 25 of the Wisconsin Constitution, adopted in 1998, states that, quote, the people have the right to keep and bear arms for security, defense, hunting, recreation, or any other lawful purpose. Wisconsin has one of the strongest protections of the personal right to keep and bear arms of any U.S. state, and this section was adopted in 1998. 54 state constitutions contain language similar to the Second Amendment, protecting the right to keep and bear arms, but it is usually much broader than the federal version. Furthermore, 6 states contain no state constitutional language protecting the right to bear arms. They are as follows: California, New York, Iowa, Minnesota, Maryland, and New Jersey. 32 states have constitutional provisions specifically protecting the rights of crime victims in the criminal justice process. Other states may contain such protection, but it is not a part of the state constitution. 15 states enshrine healthcare rights in their constitutions for at least certain segments of their populations. With respect to reproductive rights, 4 states, Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, and West Virginia, have constitutional provisions in place which specifically prohibit protecting the right to an abortion should Roe v. Wade ever be overturned by the Supreme Court. Last but certainly not least, of the 9 states which do not collect taxes on personal income, 3 of them, Texas, Tennessee, and Nevada, have state constitutional bans specifically prohibiting such collection. So that wraps up this video on state constitutions. Hopefully you learned a great deal in just how diverse these 50 constitutions are, and by contrast, the very similar features that they seemingly all share, and all of this is, learned in our study of American civics, right? And this is my other prop here, which is a copy of the Maryland Constitution of 1867, and it also contains the U.S. Constitution as well. So I thank you so much for listening to this video about state constitutions, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, I hope you learned a lot from it, at least one thing, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I ask that you drop me a like. Your likes matter. All right. They matter more than you realize. All right. And in addition to like, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Subscriptions certainly matter and increase my profile both on here and elsewhere. So again, I thank you so much for listening to this video. If you have any questions or controversies, you can leave them down below and I'll be happy to answer them. And that being said, I depart with the timeless words of my teaching role model, Mr. George Feeney. Believe in yourself, dream, try, do good. And I'll talk to you at the next video. Cheers.